Conflict in Sudan is growing worse by the day. Doctors Without Borders say last weekend was the deadliest since the conflict began, and now 26 groups have sent an urgent letter to Congress urging them to do more to prevent atrocities. One humanitarian worker with Nonviolent Peace Force, Sarah Mohammed Salema, who has to travel through 14 checkpoints to get to her office, tells us more about what it's like there right now on the ground.
Every day I go to bed and wake up to the sound of gunfires. People need safety, food, and medical care. The medical care that's available here is very basic. Most of those who have chronic diseases are dying due to lack of medicine. Since the beginning of war, Darfur region has not received any food aids. Most of the people hardly could eat one meal a day.
Also told us she had to take shelter as the conflict raged on. Just listen to behind her. You can hear the gunfire. What you're about to see now is pretty graphic. More now to talk about this urgent warning about the situation in Sudan. Megan Corrado, she's the director for police and advocacy at the Alliance for Peace Building. She signed on to that letter. Glad you're with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Kira.
So we're talking about this conflict now, right, that has left at least 49 people dead, more than 100 others severely injured in just one weekend. Can you talk more about what it's like for civilians there on the ground and aid workers who are trying to save lives?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I think it's important to take a step back and reframe the conflict itself. So we know fighting broke out in mid-April between the state military forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces, the RSF. And it's really critical to understand that the RSF are very much constituted of the same people who perpetrated the genocide in 2003 and 2004. So you have two things happening right now. You have a battle between the state forces and RSF for political control, and then you have the RSF picking up where they started back in 2003 to finish the genocide that they started there, where they're trying to eradicate the non-Arab communities through death and destruction. And obviously this is creating tons of violence. You have indiscriminate killing, which we saw over the weekend, attacks on markets and residential areas. And then you're also seeing, in the news we heard from the UN Special Envoy, 13 mass graves were discovered. And that's really indicative of the ethnic-based violence. So it's incredibly difficult and challenging. There's 20 million plus people that are suffering from food insecurity. 5 million people have been displaced. Towns and villages have been burned to the ground. And of course, thousands of people have died. And that number is probably going to go up significantly higher once we have better access to those places. And it's these NGOs who are very under-resourced that are the lifeline to those people in Darfur. So people like Sarah are true heroes providing this response.
And your organization is now one of 26 groups asking for immediate action from Congress. What can Congress do? Lay out some of the specifics in this letter.
Thanks. I mean, I'm really proud we're the Alliance for Peace Building. We have over 200 organizational members. Nonviolent Peace Force is one of our most trusted. And it's just been baffling. Here we are 5+ months into the conflict, and we haven't seen Congress act at all. We just want a hearing. It's not too much to ask for, to shine light onto the situation, to take a critical look at what the U.S. government is doing. What has been the response? Because we would say it's been pretty disjointed at this point. And of course, to mobilize and educate other members of Congress to provide the direly needed resources for people like Sarah, Nonviolent Peace Force, and the international NGOs that are on the ground, but really the frontline workers, because so many of them are local Sudanese civilians. So they are tasked with the impossible challenge of both providing life-saving assistance and trying to under life-threatening conditions.
So earlier this week, the UN envoy to Sudan resigned. He also warned that this conflict could be morphing into a full-scale war. What can international organizations do to help?
I mean, we just need to keep raising the alarm. And honestly, the media, it's really critical role to play here too, shining a light on what's happening. For some reason, this conflict hasn't really gained a lot of traction. But this has happened before. And in the 2003 genocide really did galvanize the international community. Calls of never again, which we've seen since World War II, Rwanda, Bosnia, and again in Darfur. So we really need a call to action from the US, the UN, other global leaders to condemn resoundingly what is happening, to formally determine that it is atrocities that are occurring right now, and that there are things to do. And yes, words are simple, but they're so important because they will have cascading impacts. It can mobilize the international community to provide more resources, to get in direly needed humanitarian aid, to secure humanitarian corridors, to get people to safety, but also get food and medicine in. There's things like sanctions that can be imposed upon the perpetrators of violence and the countries, organizations, and individuals who are providing the weapons to perpetrate the atrocities. And of course, if we've learned anything over the last few years, impunity goes punished. Here we are again, 20 years later after the first genocide in Darfur, because we didn't take care of justice and accountability. So we need to support the International Criminal Court, other organizations doing documentation on the ground, collecting evidence and preserving it so it can be used in judicial processes eventually.
Well, it's an important story for us to continue to cover, and talking to people like you help put it all in perspective. And it's just nice to know there are groups taking action and, demanding more from Congress. Megan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.